If you don't know about flyer deals on Instacart, this message is for you. Flyer deals are like strolling through your favorite store looking for deals, but you're scrolling your phone, and maybe you're in bed. Because getting delivery doesn't mean you have to miss deals like you'd get at the store, like the one creamer that doesn't make your stomach hurt, or the pasta sauce you can't not buy when it's on sale. So download the Instacart app, shop flyers, and never miss a deal on one of your favorites. Plus, get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, broadcasting live every Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Central from Panama City Beach, Florida, home of the world's most beautiful beaches. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining me on my weekly broadcast. Every week, I'll feature some of the best instructors, coaches, authors, and entrepreneurs in the golf business today. I begin with a great discussion on Coach's Corner, followed by an insightful interview with my special guest. So let's get started by introducing tonight's Coach's Corner panel. All right, good evening, everybody, and once again, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico. All right, we've got a great show for you tonight. As mentioned, we're going to be starting off with Coach's Corner, and I'll introduce the guys in just a minute. And then a little bit later on in the show, I'm going to be joined by my very special guest, Dr. Joe Parent, best-selling author of Zen Golf, Mastering the Mental Game. He'll be joining me on the second half of the show. Just a quick program note, as most of you probably discovered when you tuned in last week, unfortunately, my guest last week didn't make it. He had a little bit of a conflict with the time and got confused, for lack of a better word, so he didn't actually make it to the show, but I'm working on rescheduling him for the first available date. So my apologies for those tuning in to listen to last week's guest. I will endeavor to get him back on the show as quickly as possible, but he wanted me to send his apologies to the listeners for not appearing last week, and it was certainly an honest misunderstanding. All right, show is also sponsored by iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing top quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, offering insightful reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top PGA and LPGA teach professionals, all designed to help improve your game from tee to green. Subscribe today at golftipsmag.com. All right, we've got a great show, as I mentioned. Joining me this evening on the Coach's Corner panel, first up is Pete Buchanan. He is the founder and director of instruction and owner of Plain Simple Golf, which, of course, houses the Plain Simple Golf circuit and the Simple Swing repeater training brace. And he's been teaching for 30-plus years in this wonderful business of golf. Also rounding out, and also a veteran of the game, is Clint Wright, a 30-year member of the PGA. He's also a partner at TGM Golf and a big proponent of the R3 approach. Also one of the best, in my opinion, covering the short game today, and among my favorite guests here on the Coach's Corner panel. So, Pete, Clint, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Ted. Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Ted.
I appreciate it always. Thanks. It's always a lot of fun having this part of the show. I certainly enjoy the interview portions as well, but it's always fun to have some good discussion on the panel. All right, we're going to talk about last week. For those of you who turned in, our topic was your first trip to the golf course, what you need to know, part one. Tonight we're going to talk part two. So just a very quick recap. This is obviously directed more for beginners, but it's always good to get a little refresher course. So last week we talked a little bit on the panel about what you do when you arrive at the golf course. How do you check in? What happens when you're driving up into the parking lot? How early you should arrive. Generally, obviously there's no set rule, but you want to make sure that you come in a little bit before your tee time. So for an example, if you're teeing off at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's always recommended that you try to show up about an hour early, certainly 45 minutes early. That gives you time to get your bags and get your equipment all ready. And if the course allows a check-in or a bag drop, if you will, you want to get that going. And also you want to maybe, if you haven't had a chance to grab some lunch, maybe you can get a quick bite to eat. Usually the clubhouse has some good fast meals and healthy meals to get to. And also it gives you an opportunity to go out to the practice the practice green, maybe make some practice putts. And if you're there a little bit earlier, you might even grab a small bucket of balls and head out to the practice area, to the driving range, if you will, and work on some of the clubs before you get out there and hit the first tee. So a lot of different things we talked about last week, and if you want to hear them in a little more detail, then you can listen to last week's show to hear part one. So, Pete, I'm going to start with you on this one here. And again, the topic tonight is your first trip to the golf course. A lot of our beginners, you'd be surprised how many people have no idea what to do once they get to the golf course. So we talked, as I mentioned last week, about some of the things to do to prepare. But now we're ready to get to the first tee. So we've made it to the first tee. We've checked in. We've managed to practice a little bit. We've maybe grabbed a bite to eat if we didn't get one earlier. And now we're getting ready to hit that first tee shot. What are some things to do to prepare for that? Talk a little bit about club selection. Maybe how much time should we be spending once we get up and are standing over the ball? Give us an idea. Walk us through that routine for your first tee shot of the round.
Well, that's a really good question, Ted, especially for newer players. But, the first thing I would try to do if there is a scorecard, I would make sure I'm looking over it so I can get an idea what the hole looks like. A lot of times the cards will have a picture and or, there might be a tee marker that has it, making sure you're playing a set of tees that's going to be comparable to what you're trying to do and not playing all the way back. We have so many players that will play the course too long. And, you get a comparable tee that you're going to play from. And then, the first shot, you also have to look down the fairway and kind of look at what you're up against. And I know for newer players, they may not have as much control over the ball, but, you still want to get a good idea of what's down in front of you. If there's hazards one side or the other. So trying to get a picture of what you want to do. And if you've had a chance to warm up, you have an idea where the ball's going, which would be quite nice. And so you have an idea of what you can do as far as the setup that goes. But as far as the time it takes, setting up over the ball, you don't want to take too long. I've always said the longer you stand over the ball, in my opinion, cement stands in, or sets in, so you start to become like stone. So you just want to keep a little bit of movement. And, from a time frame, I say, once you've teed it up and you've looked at where you're trying to go, and then once you set the club behind it, I'd say, it shouldn't be more than 5-10 seconds before you pull the trigger. Just get yourself relaxed, get a little bit of movement, and then off you go. Try to keep that motion right before you hit it to a minimum, not real quick, but a minimum, so that, you're not thinking about too many things that are going on. But, I think that the first tee can be, pretty nerving for a lot of people, especially, with what you're looking at and what the hole's designed like. But, try to take a nice deep breath and relax, and, you're getting ready to have some fun. And that's the real thing that you ought to keep in mind. You're out there to enjoy the golf course and what it gives to you. But I think from, just trying to set up that first time to hit that first shot, if you have a little bit of an idea of what your ball is going to do, that's going to help you, obviously, for where you're going to aim and where you're going to set it to, depending on what the hole has. But, try to stay as relaxed as you can. It's a little bit tough on that first tee, especially if there's people around watching. But, and from a club selection standpoint, I would hit something you're comfortable with. It doesn't necessarily have to be a driver. I mean, just because there's a one on the bottom doesn't mean it's the first one you hit. So, I would make sure you take a club you're comfortable with, that you can send the ball out into the fairway. And, I always like the new players, I say, hit it in the fairway as far down as you can. And I said, and in that order. Don't hit it as far as you can and hope it lands in the fairway. Hit it in the fairway as far down as you can, and then advance from there. So if it takes you, a few shots, that's fine. And, I had the advantage this last couple of days. I was working with two of my brothers, and, one's a pretty new player. And so I was splitting the holes in half of the yardage and having him, I'd say, what club goes, I'd take a 350-yard hole and I'd cut it to 175. I said, let's hit a 175 club twice. Just to break it up and get them a little bit more control over the ball. So, those are some of the things you can do just to, as a first time hitting off that first tee, to make it a little bit easier.
Right. Well said. And you're exactly right. I think for a lot of our beginning golfers, it's important, I think, backing up a little bit to what I said, earlier, is you want to show up early enough to allow you the time to get out there and hit some balls, and certainly get on the putting green for sure. Maybe do a few chip shots. I wouldn't worry. If you've got time, certainly you can hit some bunker shots as well. But you want to test the speeds of the green and get an idea of what they're going to be rolling that day. And again, sort of assessing how you're hitting the ball gives you, a better understanding of how you want to approach things. You're obviously not going to be worried too much at this stage about strategy, of course, management as much, because you're just really learning the game. But you want to do something that you're comfortable with, and I agree with that. I think, just because it's the driver, and that's typically what we hit on the longer holes, if you're not real good at it yet, scale back, hit a hybrid or a low fairway wood, or even even a 7-iron. Hitting a 7-iron off, if you can hit it relatively straight down the fairway, and even if you're only hitting it 120 yards, it's better to be 120 yards, as you said, Pete, straight down the fairway, than hitting it 200 plus yards and ending up in the woods or the bushes somewhere. So that's great. And as far as just to, again, there's no specific, obviously, you're not playing in a tournament, so they're not really on the clock the same way. But general rule of thumb is, from setting up to actually hitting the ball, somewhere between 20 and 30 seconds. You want to be prepared. You want to play ready golf when you get on that first tee. So when your playing partner, if they're going off first, you want to be the next if you're the next in line, you want to be ready to go there, get your tee and ball teed up and that, and get ready to go, and maybe take a practice swing, or even 2 if you've got time. But 20, 30 seconds, 40 maximum from start to finish. And if you're going any longer than that, like you said, Pete, the cement starts to set in, and you're just not going to play well. Clint, one of the other things that I think beginners particularly need to understand is, and when I say the rules of play, is not so much the specific rules out of the rule book. Obviously, that's important to get to know some of the basics, but even simple things like marking your ball on the green and really properly raking a bunker, and that's the general idea I'm going for here with this question. So maybe just touch on some of the basics that, your beginners might be faced with out in the golf course. They should have an understanding. They don't have to know everything, but certainly an understanding. Maybe just brush a few points there, if you wouldn't mind.
I think one of the things that, along with this question, they'll play in here, is that I don't want to disagree with you, but everything you and Pete both described about hitting a hybrid or playing that is strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So the beginning player needs to think strategy. How am I going to get this thing down the fairway better? That is a strategy. We encourage people to think about getting to a par 4 in 4 shots. That's strategy. And like Pete said, break the hole up into 275-yarders. So a bit of strategy. We encourage people to play double par. And this is one of the things from an etiquette standpoint we want to talk about, is that if I'm out playing, I'm a beginner. What we encourage people to do is, if you're playing a par 4 and you're not on the green in 4 shots, you pick it up.
Yeah.
Walk it up, put it on the edge of the green. Always putt out, because you still have to learn how to putt. But if you've hit it 4 times and you're not on the green yet on a par 4, or 10 times on a par 5, or whatever it is, cut the frustration for yourself and the people you're playing with, and most certainly the people behind you. Pick it up, walk it up on the green, and putt out. That makes the flow of play continue to move along as a beginner. And then once you can get to that green in less than double par, then you can start keeping score. So that's one of the things I would encourage people to do on the course from an etiquette standpoint. Obviously, the whole rule of thumb is leave the golf course better than you found it. As far as raking the bunker, well, in today's world, we don't rake bunkers because of the COVID, but, rake the bunkers. If don't leave trash on the course, and I would encourage you, don't leave trash in your cart. That's a good thing for the cart attendants at the end of the day. We have trash cans on the course. Put them in the trash can. Don't just pile it up on the golf cart and expect somebody to take care of it. We do, but it sure is nice to walk up on a golf cart that doesn't have any trash in it, because most of them are pretty well. So that's a thing, a little housekeeping. We, generally speaking, for beginners, depending on who it is we always like to, putt out. That eliminates having to mark your ball. You know, in the early stages, take gimmies. If it's within a foot or so, it's good. Pick it up and move on to the next hole. We don't need to go through the marking of the ball all the time. You've hit a pretty good shot. You've been successful on this hole. It's not about keeping score yet. You know, go ahead and take that putt and move on. It's easier. But if they are going to mark the ball, it's obvious it's, you know, put in a marker behind the ball, pick it up, place it back down, obviously, when it's your turn to putt. With us anyway, when we're playing, we very rarely mark the ball unless it is just absolutely standing in somebody's line. We'll mark our ball. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, we go ahead and putt out. You know, and that helps play. Mm-hmm. It helps it move along, and it's just one less step you have to do. And for beginners, that speed of play becomes a stress point for them.
Right.
So anything they can do to keep pace with the course, not that they have to play extremely fast, just as long as they're playing at the pace of the course that day, right? That takes a stress level out that they don't feel, you know, embarrassed or feel like that they're holding people up. They can relax and enjoy their day as long as they're doing a few of these things we've talked about, like the double par to get to the green. Don't mark your ball unless it's just obviously in somebody's way. Those things save just a little bit of time. That gives you an opportunity to keep moving along at the speed of the course, but not rushing it. Golf is not played by the clock. It's played by the hole. Okay? Enjoy the hole, but, you know, what you don't want to do is keep somebody else from enjoying their day so you can do some of these things. Or, most importantly, if the group behind you, you're not keeping up with the group in front, step aside, take a break, let them play through. There's nothing wrong with that. For some reason, I think even some of our more seasoned players think that there's something wrong with, you know, letting somebody play through. It's a courtesy thing that you're paying attention to the other people that have paid their dues or paid green fees to enjoy their day. You don't want to prohibit them from doing that. So there's nothing wrong with stepping aside and let them play through. So just some real simple things that people can do like that helps them enjoy the game better. Everybody they're playing with enjoys their day. And, you know, every one of us, this is the thing I think a lot of beginners don't get, is that everybody that plays this game has been them before. We've all been beginners.
Right.
Okay? And we encourage people to understand that because we have had such a mix of new players over the last couple of months. People that's testing the game out for the first time or whatever. Says we have all been where you're at. So don't be worried about it. You know, we encourage the beginner says, okay, if you're playing with three other people, if you feel, you know, self-conscious about your swing, just tell them to turn their back. You know, I don't want you watching me. You know, you have to turn your back. I'll hit it. Don't worry about it. And go on and enjoy their day. And if we can get people to do that, we can keep them in our game. And so just the little simple things that will matter a lot in the long run.
Right. And you're exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of things to learn, and I think one of the golf is already difficult enough to learn to play the game, and there are certainly a lot of rules. And I think one of the mistakes, and I agree 100% with you, I think you have to, and I don't like to use the word shortcuts, but I like to make it so that, you know, that people are having fun early on, because one of the problems that you can do as a coach or a teacher professional is overwhelm the students with too much information up front very early on in their education, if you will, of learning the game. Mm-hmm. And that can be, there are some cases, obviously, that may be okay, and it may be applicable depending on their level of play and what their understanding is. But for somebody that's never played the game, and there's a lot of things, including a lot of rules involved, and it can be very, very overwhelming on top of just learning how to hit the ball correctly. So,
that's right.
Yeah, I agree with I agree with what you said. I think you have to sort of take it case by case, of course, but generally, I think the easier we can make it for them, the more likely and more apt they're going to want to come back. And then you kind of spoon feed them a little bit each time as they come, and they learn a little bit more. And it's better that they're getting it from us than some of their buddies. I mean, certain things they can get, but we don't want we don't want their buddies teaching them the golf swing, especially when he's a 25 handicap. So, but yeah,
I do think that we have to keep in mind, as well as we play a ball and stick game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really not a complicated game. It's ball and stick. You can make as much out of it as you want to, or as little out of it. But altogether, it's a ball and stick game. That's all it is.
Right. Exactly. Just to move along a little bit, I know we've got, we're kind of focusing on the beginners here, but again, there's different level of beginners. Some other things that I think people need to understand too is knowing sort of how it works. When it's your turn to hit, as an example, and there are other again falling sort of under etiquette and courtesies that come on while you're out in the golf course. What are some other things that the folks can learn as a new golfer that's not going to be overwhelming and not going to be daunting when they come out? That's a good idea to sort of try to get them to understand up front.
I think you hit on two of them, really well right there. Understanding when it's their turn to hit. I don't think they have to play, specifically to that. I mean, if you're out in the fairway and you're far apart from each other, not that you're going to interrupt the other person, but, there's a definite flow to it. So, if they're a little bit, who's the furthest out is going to play first. It doesn't have to be exact science, but if you're not sure, you can always ask. And, just make sure that when somebody else is hitting, you're mindful of them. You're usually standing behind them or off to the side, out of the view as best you can, just so you're not bothering them when they're playing their shot, and staying quiet when they're hitting them. I know today's golf is full of carts with music blasting, which is a new thing that's out there. But when you first start off, you want to learn how to pace yourself for what you're doing. Be mindful of the other players that are out there. Be courteous. Just making sure that if you don't understand a piece of it, ask. There's probably people playing in your group that have played a little bit more. And, they, for the most part, they're not going to mind saying anything to you or helping you out. And it's not a bad thing, too, when they go to play, if there's somebody else playing with them, to say, hey, I'm new to the game. Anything that you can help me out with, I would appreciate, as far as making sure I'm standing in the right place. I don't get in your way. I'm new enough, so at certain times I might not, fully understand that. But, if you could be mindful and assist me a little bit, I'd greatly appreciate it. And that goes a long way with the other people that are playing with them, and because as Clint said, we've all been there before. We've all been beginners. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the other things that they can take when they're out there on the golf course is, remember, this is the learning process. And you know what? If you try a shot, you're around the green, and you try a little chip or a pitch, and it's not successful, don't let it frustrate you. You're learning how to do this. And if it doesn't work and you hit behind it and it goes a foot, try it another time. If that doesn't work, that's okay. Just pick it up and drop it on the green and go putt. You're learning how to position yourself and play these different types of shots around the golf course, not only from when you're on the practice tee or you're getting lessons from great lies. Well, now you go out on the golf course and they're not so great in certain areas. Mm-hmm. And so now you not only have to play a shot, but you got to play it from a crappy place. So right. You're all learning. And so, don't let those types of things, get you down. You're learning how to play. You're still new to it. And there's a lot to learn, as you said, but, don't hesitate as a new player, to just be aware of your surroundings and making sure you're not standing and somebody's putting and, you don't want to be between them and the hole. So you're standing in their line. You always want to try to get to the side or behind them so you're not in their view. I think those are the things that, just being aware of your surroundings will help you a bunch. And don't take it so serious. You're out there to have some fun. And there's nothing wrong with, if it's not working, just pick it up. It's okay. Just pick it up and go along. And if you're struggling a little bit, with tee shots and everything, then let somebody else tee off. And then just go down there where their ball is and drop yours and play from there. That's okay. You're still learning how to do it. And if you come up to a hole where there's, a tee box and water and a fairway, you're like, uh-oh, that's okay. Drive over to the other side and drop it on the fairway. It's no big deal. don't let it frustrate you. Still learning how to do it. So just take it to the other side and say, oh, look, I'm just going to play from here once I get more comfortable with trying to hit it over that water there. So it's not a big deal when you're first starting out to do that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think a lot of beginning golfers, want to feel like they're fitting in with the group, and they think that they've got to do everything. And obviously, there are rules to the game, but people understand, and the courses understand that as beginners, and actually they want you to do things in that manner because they want to keep pace of play going, obviously, for some of the better golfers out there. And, it's being respectful to the other players out on the game, and also it's good etiquette, I think, as well. Clint, I mentioned early on about arriving to the golf course, getting ready and allowing yourself sufficient time to get out there and practice. And obviously, as a beginner, they haven't really worked out what we would consider a practice regiment or regime, if you will. So, if you were advising a new player that wants to go out and play on any given day, what were some specific things, keeping in mind their level of skill at that point, what would you want them to or encourage them to practice maybe the first time or first two times out as opposed to what we would normally want them to work on? What should they be to get the best experience? What's going to give them the best bang for their buck, if you will, out in the golf course? What should they be practicing before they hit their first tee?
Well, it's going to be an obvious answer for me. I mean, they need to learn how to chip and putt. I mean, so,
right.
We encourage that. We work on people and say, look, I don't care how you hit it. If you're shooting 120, if you learn to chip and putt, you can shoot 100. So I would encourage the beginning player, if they're going out to the course, and is you want to hit a few balls just to kind of find your rhythm for the day. A small bucket of balls, every golf course has got that warm-up bag or bucket, 15, 20 balls. You're not going to find it on the day 30 minutes before you play. Just go out and loosen your body up, get some movement going, and then if the golf course allows, hit some pitch shots, just some little chips, get the feel for that. You go through the routine of a tour player. They don't just go out and bang 50 balls off the tee and go play. I mean, they hit some putts. They're out there early enough to hit some bunker shots, and they get a feel for how they're going to play that day. And so I would encourage them just to loosen their body up. There's some great training tools out there to loosen up with. That would be fine. But hit some chips and putts because you're going to hit a lot of those shots every day when you're beginning. That 50 yards to the hole, you're going to hit a lot of those shots. So practice those, get good at those. One of the things we work on with people is whatever you hit your third shot with, make sure you're good with it. Because if you can get your third shot on the green, you can do pretty well. And so that's what I would encourage. If they were going to have 10 minutes, hit a couple of chips, hit a few putts. If you got 20 minutes, hit a few chips, hit a few putts, hit a few swings, and then go to the tee. I have a pet peeve in this business, and I've had it for 40 years. If you got a 10 o'clock tee time, that doesn't mean when you get to the course at 10 o'clock. That means you got your ball teed up at 10 o'clock. It's amazing.
Right.
And, and so give yourself a half hour, like I said, get there early enough. But if I was only going to have one thing I could do, it would be hit a few chips, hit a few putts, and then advance the ball. All right. I'm going to say something what Pete said about, if you just get tired of playing, ride in the cart for a couple of holes. Doesn't hurt anything. You have paid to ride in that cart. So if you want to ride it and not play, that's fine. So it's okay. But just a chip and putt, get a feel for the ball and the club a little bit, and then go out and enjoy the day. That's all you can do. And one other thing, I think not to be overly pessimistic about our teaching profession, is that we have to teach people to play golf, not just how to hit a golf ball. So we spend a lot of time, the guys up here do, and I'm sure Pete has and you have, is I'm going to take a player on the course and teach them how to play. You stand here when I'm hitting. I'm going to stand there. So you're teaching them how to play, not just teaching them how to hit a putt or a wedge or, hit your driver. So there's an obligation that we have as professionals and teaching professionals is to when they come and are taking lessons, we need to take it upon ourselves to show them those things. And I think most people, most pros do, but I think it's imperative that if we're going to maintain beginners in this game, then they have to enjoy when they're out there. And if we take an obligation to teach them how to conduct themselves, then that's part of teaching them how to play the game.
Right, well said. Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. And I think that, as professionals, I think that, we obviously want to help them to be able to hit the ball better, because obviously that's going to make and give them more enjoyment in the game. But more importantly, they have to understand actually how to play the game. And, I mean, we've seen this time and time again, how many tour players even out there that are just phenomenal ball strikers, but they're not winning. And I know that there are other factors involved. I mean, you've got a higher level of competition and more better players than maybe what you might have 20, 30 years ago. But the fact of the matter is, some of the best players out there that are winning are not necessarily the best ball strikers. There's a lot more going on there, and they know how to play. They know how to get the ball. I mean, how many times have we watched Tiger, as exciting as it has been over the years to watch him play? How many times have we seen him push a drive, a fairway over, but then he's able to recover and still shoot a good score on that hole? So, or hit it in the rough somewhere, and he's got looks almost an unplayable lie, but somehow he manages to get it out because he's learned how to play the game. He's learned how to recover during difficult shots, and he knows how to put the pieces together. So, he's not the best ball striker out there. We've known that, but he knows how to play the game. So you're exactly right. I think it's, it's a balancing act. We want them to be able to hit the ball well, but if we're focusing all of our energy on that aspect and not actually teaching them how to play the game, they're not going to get the enjoyment or fulfillment out of it. And also, it's constant work. They're not having any fun. If they're always grinding it out on the range, trying to be the best ball striker out there and not actually getting out and enjoying the game, that adds to the frustration as well. Pete, what do you think about this? For a lot of our beginning golfers, sometimes, we all love playing beautiful golf courses. There's some wonderful golf courses in virtually every state and beyond. But for beginning golfers, maybe it might be more prudent for them to hit, if they've got one in their area, and many courses do, a par 3 course or an executive style course it's often referred to, or even simply just playing 9 holes. They don't necessarily have to play 18, right?
Oh, absolutely. We have just down the street from my house, there's a 9-hole par 3, which is a great place for them to start. You go over to play the regular course, and the par 3 is empty, and they're losing out. They're not understanding where the newer players. It's a perfect place for them to go. I think the longest hole from the front tees is maybe 85 or 100 yards from the very forward tees, and they're about 3 sets, so you can play it a little bit longer back. But I love going over there because it's a great way to work on all of the shorter stuff. But I think it's a perfect place for them to play, to not only learn the flow of the game and how it works, but then the holes are shorter, and they don't have to worry about it too much. Or what I've said a lot of times when they're starting out, I said, I want you to drive down to where you're 150 yards out and then start there. So every hole you play, you go down to the 150-yard marker, and that's where you're going to tee off from. So let's just start there until you get used to how the golf course moves. And I totally agree with Clint. I said, all the shots that you're going to play in golf, the ones that have the most feel are the shortest ones. And usually they're the ones that are the most neglected. And so if you can get a good feel for putting and chipping and little pitch shots, goodness, those are the scoring shots. So if we're going to teach beginners properly, we need to teach them how to score first. And those are the short game shots. Teach them how to putt, chip, pitch. And, a lot of those pitch shots can lead into, better full swings. But, it's not only getting them to understand how to play the game, but you also have to get them to understand how to score. And, just hitting, drivers off the tee all the time isn't going to help them. They need to understand the short shots and the variances in the short shots and how important they are. It's a great way to save a ton of shots. And so I think, from the newest players, it's just an overall aspect of that is, those executive courses are dynamite for them to learn on. They're usually not very crowded, and they can play at a nice, easy pace and not worried about anybody, pushing them or trying to play through them. And if they are, just let them go. It's no big deal. You always have some that, they, as we used to say back home, people would come and say, "What's the course record?" And I'd say an hour and 29 minutes. And we were being,
right.
facetious because, everybody's trying to play a zillion miles an hour. But that was the course record. There's 4 of us that played in an hour and 29 minutes. But, it's getting them to understand that there's a pace to it. But I think the par threes are phenomenal. So if they can get to those, well, I'd have all the new players. And I've done that with the ones that I've had here. I've had beginners where I teach, but when I get them to go to the golf course the first time, I take them to the par three. It's just an easier place to go, and it really gives them a good setup from tee to green, and they can see the green from the tee, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you can't. There's a dog leg or something. They're like, they have no idea what they're looking at. So I think the par threes are a really valuable place to play.
Right, and I know myself, growing up, as many in our generation, we're taught most often than not, by our father or maybe an uncle or what have you, and that's what we learned on. I mean, my father, belonged to a country club, and they had a par three course there, 9-hole course, and he said, "That's where we're going. This is where we're gonna learn the game. This is where you're gonna learn the game." And when you're ready, then we'll come out and we'll play on the big boys course, as he used to call it.
Yeah.
But he wanted me to learn it, and for the very reasons that you talked about. And I think the other thing too, that we have to remember, from a new player's perspective, they don't have a lot of confidence starting out, unless they happen to have some inborn talent and are able to stripe it down the middle of the fairway from the get-go. Most of them are not going to hit very well. Most of them are not going to be able to accomplish a lot of things that we've talked about here tonight. And so we want to really develop a level of confidence for them so that when they do get out, again, they can move up forward tees just to make it a little bit easier, but they're going to feel more confident. I mean, there's a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of beautiful courses out there that I know they would love to and anxious to get out there and play, but they're not going to enjoy them if their level of play is not good enough to really get the best out of that experience. So I would rather, lead them to an executive or par three type course. Let them, as you said, they can see the green from the tees. Let them build up some confidence. Work on some of the areas of the game that we've talked about, the shorter shots and so forth. And again, typically they're not as busy. And then when they get confident, then you can move them maybe just to 9 holes on the larger course. Again, just to get them. Some of the biggest mistakes I've seen is a lot of beginners and even high handicap amateurs go out there and they think they've got to get that 18 holes in, and they've got to play the longest hole, and or the longest course, and they've got to hit from the championship tees because they feel like they got to get their money's worth, and then they just get out there and they're hitting 120, 130, and they're scratching their head at the end of the round, wondering why they're not scoring very well, and it's because they don't know how to play and they just are not very good. And so, build your confidence up. Do some things that are going to increase that level of confidence so that when you are out there and you're working with your instructor and your teacher, you can talk about some of the things, some of the experiences that you've had, and then you can work on some of the problem areas. And then when you get to a level that you are feeling more comfortable and confident with your abilities because you have been working in the right manner, then you can sort of look at it as a graduation. The same thing with equipment, and that's, Clint, what I want to lead with you into, and that is equipment. We're allowed 14 clubs in the bag, but it's not necessary. What would you recommend for a beginner? Let's get them set up, again, to give them the best opportunities out there. What would you recommend that they put in the bag?
Let me make a comment about what y'all talking about before we go there very quickly. In 1983, I bought one of those par 3 golf courses. Okay, we still own it. The short hole's 140, the long hole's 220. And here's what you tell people. You go out, and right now we saw our short course 2 weeks ago play 3 times as many players as normally plays on Sunday. And it all comes down, I'm going to pay $50 to bang it, or am I going to pay $12 to bang it?
Right.
And so get your money's worth. So why pay big fees when you can go learn at that other course? So you're absolutely right. I was chuckling when y'all were talking about this. I said, this is wonderful. It's coming back around. I mean, y'all keep talking. Y'all are doing a great job about the par 3 executive course owners out there. like we've been for years. I mean, it's wonderful. Equipment. The cheapest equipment they can find that is of our era. We don't need to be buying something that was built in the 60s or 70s, that
right.
we always encourage people to buy the commercial grade club. We've always sold them at our clubs for the beginners. Most of what we used to call the old 3 and 8 set, 3 woods, 8 irons, a putter, and a bag, and here you go, But in today's world, there's some really nice, innovative things in the beginner level clubs where you can get like a 7, 8, 9 wedge putter, a couple little hybrids, and maybe a high lofted driver and a bag very economically. So if you just want something new, I wouldn't go any more than that. It's hard enough to hit a 3, 4, 5, and 6 iron when you know what you're doing, much less when you're just beginning. And there's always a market for the resale of that set. When you get ready to trade up to, like you say, a big boy set of clubs, there's always the resale market there. Okay?
Yep.
Those are always in need, just like junior clubs. It's always in need for junior clubs. We used to tell people, hey, spend $150 on your kid's first set of clubs because you're really only investing $50 because you can get $100 for them anytime. I'll give you $100 back for them, and you bring them in. So you're only spending $50. Don't spend $50 on a cheap set of clubs because you're really only spending $20. You can always recoup some of your investment back. But so there's 2 ways of looking at it. That really innovative beginner box set that they'll see it at some of your big box stores and stuff, that's not a bad place to be. Most golf courses will help you with that. That'll get you a little better quality for your money. Or look for that kind of moderate, maybe 4 or 5-year-old used set that's out there on every platform in America that you can find. And so I guess what I'm getting around to is don't think just going cheap is the best thing to do. Buy quality, buy some value, because you're going to be able to recoup some of your money back no matter what you do. But here's what you don't do. You don't go buy a $1,000 set of golf clubs.
Right.
You don't need that. And because you're not going to recoup as much of your money back. So 7 iron, 8, 9 wedge putter, couple of hybrids, maybe a 3-wood or a high lofted driver that you'll eventually get to. Nice bag. If you're going to spend any extra money, spend it for a good quality putter. I think that's important. Good quality putter, because that's a club that you're going to take with you maybe for a long time. Once you get a good putter and you got confidence in it. I've got a putter in my collection I've had since I was 15, 16 years old. I like it. I'm not going to get rid of it. And that's the same when I was starting or you were starting. If you got a good quality putter, it's a club you're going to carry with you no matter what your other clubs look like. So good quality putter, intermediate set of clubs with, and sometimes maybe even every other one, a 3, 5, 7, something like that will work. But just decent quality for a reasonable amount of money, and you can find that in today's world in the little box sets that'll get you started.
Yeah, and that's some great advice. And see, this is what I was getting at the beginning of this segment is, excuse me, a lot of our beginning golfers, they don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. They don't know, what's available to them. And I think it's important, sometimes I think even in from our positions as instructors, we take for granted that they know more than they do. Obviously they sometimes like to think they do. They come in and say, well, I've watched this video or I've seen that tip or whatnot. But the truth of the matter is, even people that have been playing for a number of years, when you really break it down, they don't know as much as they think they do. So they really count on, our guidance. So it's important for us to lead them in a direction that is going to give them the most enjoyment of that experience. And if it means, again, as you suggested with the equipment, to go out and spend $1,000 on a set of golf clubs for a relatively new golfer, even somebody that's been playing for a couple of years, in my opinion, and I know that some people listening that are in our business are probably cursing my name right now. But
well,
the truth
okay.
is, it's the same as, when I went to the PGA show this past January, and I got looking at some of the new equipment, and yeah, it's exciting and it's interesting and it's fancy and it looks cool. But then I look at the price tag and it's $650 for a driver. Well, I wouldn't spend that, and I've been around this game a long time. So I look at it this way: if you're not able to hit the club, then you shouldn't be buying it, especially at that price. And it's
Somebody's
it feels a lot better. Well, it ain't me.
Yeah.
But,
somebody's buying.
But the point is that, going to what you said earlier, is I think as and consumers are more savvy now when it comes to purchases and that. But in an area like golf, that they know they have to have equipment. It can be costly and expensive. We need to be good stewards of that and say, look, we're going to guide you in a way that's going to be cost effective for you, that you're going to get the best enjoyment of the game. You're going to have good equipment, good quality equipment that'll last you for a little while. And then when you progress in your game down the road, if you want to treat yourself to, a little more advanced set, then that's great too. But for right now, this is what you need. This is going to do the job, and this is going to help you get the most enjoyment of your game. A quick wrap up, guys, as we get ready to close out the segment here in a few minutes. We've arrived at the golf course. We've gone through the motions. We've gotten out there. We've played an exciting round. Pete, I'm going to start with you and maybe just touch on a few points, and then I'll let you, Clint, sort of wrap up this question. But now it's time to sort of assess and analyze what the day has brought us. So we've been out in the golf course. We've practiced. We've played our game. And now we're coming back to the clubhouse. As a beginner, Pete, what are some good things? Well, first up, let me back up. Should we be taking or paying attention to what's going on out in the golf course? Maybe make some notes. What should we be conscious of? And when we get back in, we'll talk about some specific things that we can do to sort of self-analyze what's been going on during the round. What are your thoughts?
Well, definitely, I would have them take notes of the things that they struggled a little bit with, and also notate what they did the best. It's not bad after they finished 18. They go around. If you're going to have something to drink, some water, iced tea, whatever your favorite beverage is, and to sit down and just think about the round that you had. If you can take notes while you're playing, it might be helpful so that or you can do it when you're done. But it's always a good thing to go back over the round and just kind of think of the things that you still need some work on, some of the situations you struggled in, some of the shots that you struggled with. And that's also good feedback going back to them. If they're taking lessons, they can go back to the pro and say, hey, I got a chance to play. I had a great time, but boy, this situation was I had no idea what to do out of this. And so, that could be some fuel for them for future lessons to figure out how to play those certain shots. But yeah, I always encourage my players to take notes and write down, positives and negatives. What did I do well? What did I not do well? And what things that they feel they need to work on, so that when we sit down and go over the notes together, we can sort of look and, go over those notes and say, as you said before, they may feel that they need to work on this, but actually they need to work on something different. Right. Just to make sure that we can see their notes and make sure we're on the same page as to what they're trying to do. And I think that's always helpful for them to go back over the round. And I always have done that. When I get finished, I like to go back over and, just look at the things that, that I did well and really enjoy those, and look at the things I didn't do so well and what can I do to make those better the next time I play.
Yeah, and obviously, we want the beginners to be conscious of their time. I mean, we don't need a memoir, and they don't have to write an essay when they're out there, but it is good to jot down some points. And they don't necessarily even have to do it every single hole. They can just sort of do an overview. If they're struggling with their putting, then make some notes. What areas is it? The longer putts they're really struggling with, or is it even some of the short knee knockers that they're really having some issues with? I mean, I've seen a lot of beginner golfers that get out there and are faced with a 30-foot lag putt, and they'll cozy it right up to the hole within a couple of feet. But then when they get up there to close the deal, as it were, suddenly that 2.5 foot, 3 foot putt, you would think it was a mile away, and they're nervous over it. So, Clint, I know you don't need to necessarily repeat everything. If there's some points that you want to touch on that Pete mentioned,
it's real simple. Yeah, and you must be watching me play here lately. I mean, I roll it up there and 2-footers like a mile long. No, I mean, Pete's right on the money. I mean, what we encourage to do is if you want to play better, you have to prepare better. And the only way you prepare better is to analyze what you've already done. And so we call it the PPA cycle. You prepare, you perform or play, and then you analyze. Because you have to analyze the issues in order to prepare better for the next performance. I mean, golf's no different than doing a play or anything else. I mean, you didn't like your performance, you analyze it, what was wrong with it, then you can prepare better for the next performance. So that's pretty much not a given, and I agree with it. It's not a specific every shot, everything. As you're beginning, it's more of a general concept of where you need to work. Once you've reached a level of play to where you're shooting in the mid-70s, you want to go to the low 70s, then it's a very specific thing. But as a general rule, as a beginner, it's more of the general idea, like you said, how was my putting today? How was my swing today? Was I making good decisions? Those kind of analysis to where you know where to go practice. But there's no question that Pete's perfectly right as far as making some notes, analyze it where you can prepare better to play the next time. And always go in the bar, buy your beverage, hot dog, help the club out. That way they keep your green fees down. It costs you less to play golf. Real simple.
Right, exactly. Good for you to throw that in there.
There you go. I'm working for everybody out here. I'm working at it.
That's right. That's right. Do a little marketing on the side.
There you go.
But all seriousness, the other thing too is, a lot of times, as you both really pointed out, a lot of our beginning golfers particularly focus on the wrong areas. They think because they had a bad run, well, I'm not hitting it far enough, I'm not hitting it long enough down the fairway, when in actuality it might be their chipping is not very good, or their pitch shots are falling short each time, or maybe it's a combination of a couple of different things. So a lot of times, again, this is why it's important for them to assess what's been going on and be honest. It's better to be honest with yourself and say, you know what, I'm not hitting it the farthest down the fairway, but I'm hitting it pretty decent. I'm in the middle of the fairway, or certainly in play all the time, and we can work on the distance as well at some point. But really struggling is my pitches and my chips around the green, or my putting, or whatever the case may be. And those are really where, guys as well as I do, that's where you're losing most of your strokes. You're not losing it off the tee. We need to put it in position, of course. But again, most people that I've seen, with a few exceptions, they can get within 2, 3, even 4 shots. They can get to the green with some relativity of success. But then once they get there, that's when a lot of it falls apart, and you start seeing the 8s and the 9s and the 10s and whatnot. So focus on some of that. Make those notes, and then get back with your instructor and talk to them about some of those areas, and then they can give you specific tips and training tools to help overcome some of that. And again, don't be afraid to get out on some of these par 3 or executive courses as well. Help build your confidence up there. And I think once you become a little bit, proficient there, and you're certainly never going to master it, but as soon as you become pretty confident, pretty competent on that par 3 course, then you can graduate to the next level and get a little longer golf course and challenge yourself there and go through the same process. But, it's nice to take trips and to get into some of these resorts and they're beautiful courses, but it's not going to be very good for your self-esteem if you're out there. And as you said, Clint, you're going to pay a lot more than $50, but you're paying a high green fee and you're not really enjoying it. It doesn't make any sense. And we want, if we're truly going to be honest with ourselves and we're going to grow this game, we've got to get real about it, and we've got to get people out and just having fun and play to their ability and let them work towards a goal down the road of maybe being a more accomplished player, but not try to shove them into something that they're not ready for. Grice, some great discussion tonight. I appreciate some great thoughts and viewpoints, and hopefully our beginning golfers that are listening out there, which I know there's always a lot of them from some of the feedback I get, hopefully they took away a few nuggets, if you will. And later in the show, when my special guest, Dr. Joe Parent, joins me, we're going to talk about what goes on upstairs between the ears and how that can help your game as well. But very quickly, guys, if you want to let the folks know the best way to reach out to you, if they want to get in touch or have any questions for you, how's the best way to do that? Pete, you go first, and then Clint.
Hey, Ted, again, thanks for having me on. Clint, it's always a great time to be on with you. I really enjoy it. They can reach me at plainsimplegolf.com. The Plain is Plane, and all my contact info is out there. So if you have any questions, drop me a note, and let's get a conversation started.
Well said. Thank you. Clint?
Yeah, Pete, it's always a pleasure. You know that, and Ted as well. I have a lot of fun on the show every time, and I appreciate you including me. Just real simple. They can send me an email to clintgolf001@yahoo.com, and love to talk to them. And you guys have a nice evening and a great weekend coming up, okay?
Appreciate it. Again, thank you guys
Clint.
always for bringing your best on the Coach's Corner panel. I appreciate it very much, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time here. So have a great weekend as well, and much continued success, and be safe out there.
All right. Be
Thanks,
good.
Ted.
Thanks,
You
guys.
as well.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, that was my very special guests on the Coach's Corner panel tonight, Pete Buchanan and Clint Wright, both great golf professionals who've been in around the course, if you will, for many, many moons, and always bring some, I think, some insightful viewpoints to the show, and I always appreciate having them here on the Coach's Corner panel. Again, I just want to remind everybody the show is sponsored by iGolf Sports Network, and iGolf is a broadcast and media production company designed to provide top-quality programming to attract the golfing enthusiast, and, of course, Golf Tips Magazine, the most in-depth instructional magazine, offering insightful reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top PGA and LPGA teach professionals, all designed to help improve your game from tee to green. So subscribe today at golftipsmag.com. All right, as I mentioned, my very special guest this evening, Dr. Joe Parent. He is a best-selling author of Zen Golf, Mastering the Mental Game. We're going to talk about that tonight, and hopefully be able to help you in that area of your game. He's a renowned expert in performance psychology and has coached the mental game in golf, business, and life for over 40 years. He has worked with major champions, many other top golf professionals, as well as amateurs at every level. He has the singular distinction of coaching both a man, Vijay Singh, and a woman, Christy Kerr, to number one in the world golf ranking. Golf Digest magazine, honored Dr. Parent in their in their list of top mental game experts in the world. So please welcome my very special guest tonight, Dr. Joe Parent. Good evening, Joe, and welcome.
Hey, Ted.
I'm doing very well. I can certainly hear you, and I know you've been listening to some of the program here as we've gone along to the panel discussion. Any thoughts or comments that you want to add before we continue on?
Yeah, I actually made a couple of notes, and thank you for the introduction. I always smile when I hear you say "out and about." In the Canadian. I am a naturalized Canadian citizen as well as a natural-born American citizen. I lived in Halifax, Nova Scotia for 10 years and got my citizenship there. So I liked a lot of the things those guys were saying about beginners. So one of the things that I'll start with beginners, that it's always good if you're playing, when you go out to play, to let the people know on first tee that you're a beginner, and if you're not a complete beginner, that you're still learning the game, and that you play the game you play is OPS. That's what I call it, OPS, and it stands for Optional Personal Scramble, which means that at any point that I feel like it, I can pick up and drop near your ball.
Right.
OPS happens to stand for other person's shot. So,
right.
and no good golfer that you play with is going to object to that. And you say, you know what?
Right.
I didn't like mine so much. picking up and coming to play yours. It reminded me, I was teaching a women business and golf conference, a program for women beginners who wanted to learn business golf.
Mm-hmm.
We went through all the instruction, and I gave them the mental game aspect and how to do a good routine and work with their breathing. And there was a swing instructor. I'll never forget what she said. She said, "Ladies, take the game seriously, but don't take yourself seriously." I thought I used that a lot. And we went to the first hole, and we were going to play regular golf. And one of the women, we were walking out the fairway, and she picks up her ball. And I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, that's how you play golf. You pick up your ball, and you go to one of the other ones." And I said, "Oh, really?" She had never played a regular round of golf. She had only played in charity tournaments or company tournaments.
Right.
And we realized that when we got to the second tee, and she said, "Where's the little tent and table with the drinks?" He thought that whenever you played, there was a table with drinks and prizes at every tee, and you picked up your ball, played where somebody else hit it. So I thought that was pretty funny. So
I wish it was that. I wish it was that simple.
That's right. So for beginners, just say, "This is a game I play, OPS, and if I don't like it, I'm gonna pick it up. So I promise I will keep up the pace." And that's all a golfer wants to hear. They don't care where you hit your shots as long, and you say, and I've got a lot of golf balls, so if I can't see it, so I'm not going in the woods. If I can't see it from the rough, I'm dropping where your ball is.
Right.
So no, and I don't want you to spend any time looking for mine. Well, that's music to any golfer's ears.
Right.
I liked what the guy said. They said, and they said, please, I'm a beginner. Please let me know where it's best for me to stand, whose turn it is, so I can learn the etiquette of the game for him. But don't try to teach me how to play while I'm out here. Don't give me instruction.
Right.
Please, you're going to be dying to tell me what I'm doing wrong. But and what you can do for beginners, you say, my instructor has asked me to work on a couple of things, and he said not to tell anybody. And so now there will be some people that cannot help but give advice.
That's true.
They can't help them. So what beginners should do is say, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And let me work on that for a while. And if I need anything else, I'll get back to you." And so you don't say, "Don't tell me what to do," and don't try to do what they say. You don't have to listen. You don't have to try what they say. It's funny. I was working with VJ. And we were out in a pro-am, and one of the amateurs wasn't hitting it very well, and VJ said, "Here's what you need to do with your grip," and he got the guy to change his grip, which is pretty challenging while you're playing. And the guy, he tried to do it off the tee for 2 or 3 holes. On the third hole after the tip, he waited till VJ was looking away or talking to his caddy, and he went back to his old grip and hit a good shot. And VJ said, "See, I told you you'd get it." So be appreciative of the advice, but don't necessarily follow it. And always say thank you, and then just play what you've been working on. Now, the other thing I wanted to share. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. No, please go ahead.
Okay, so other comments on what they were saying. The other thing, I started on a pitch and putt. The long hole was 120 yards. That was the big hole.
Right.
That's the one we need to have our 9-iron for. Everything else was a sand wedge, and they gave us a putter and we had a choice of 2 irons to take. and I was 10 years old. And you know what? That's how I learned the game, and I never had a problem as I graduated to a longer course. I didn't really have lessons. I didn't play that well, but I never got bored because I learned how to chip and pitch and putt. And so I really liked what they said about that. Now, if you're teaching kids, I have a special technique for teaching kids how to play, which actually improves your game. Okay? What usually happens? A mom or dad takes their son or daughter out to play, and if they're decent golfers, they hit their tee shot, and then it's a number of shots before the kid gets to theirs. They may not even remember where they hit their ball. And the kid feels bad because their parents hit it so much farther or so, and they're not having any fun. So I, of course, like what they said about they start at the 150 marker, which is, or even the 100 marker. You want to say, you want to hit a shot where they're going to have at least a full wedge into the green. And once they start getting better and hit it farther, you move them back from the 100 to the 125 to the 150 to the 175, and so on. Now, here's the secret. What usually happens? It usually revolves around the adult's game, and the kid has to try to catch up. You make you make it revolve around your kid's game. And here's the special thing you do. They tee off from wherever you teed off. And your job is to try to hit your ball as close to where theirs ended up as you can. So if they only hit it 20 yards, you got to play a 20-yard pitch. If they hit it 70 yards, you got to hit a 70-yard shot. So the two things it does, it makes it about them, which kids are much happier if it's about them than about anybody else, right?
Of course, right.
And you get to work your touch and your short game and your pitch shots, and with that, and don't use a yardage marker. A rangefinder. Just kind of feel it, and your game will get so much better. They will have so much fun because you're trying to get as close to them as you can. Now, once you get on the green or near the green, you can say, okay, everybody plays their own ball in. But until then, your job is only to hit as close to theirs as you can. It is so great for the kids. The kids are going to have more fun. You're going to have a great time working on your partial shots, and you don't even need to bring your full set of clubs. Okay.
Yeah, that's a
couple more things. Go ahead.
I was just going to add real quickly, and then I'll let you continue. That's an excellent point, because you're exactly right. It's very intimidating, especially for little kids that are out there with their parents. That they all want to impress their parents. They want to be the big boy, big girl sort of speak. And there's nothing worse than a parent to get out there off the championship tee and puts one 250 yards down, and the kid's just looking, where'd the ball go? And they have no chance. It might take them 10 shots to get that far. So you're exactly right. I think that's a great point. Because you want to have that bonding experience with the child out on the golf course, especially when you're first trying to introduce them to the game. And if you start doing it where they feel very incompetent or inferior, they're going to lose interest, because they think they just cannot wrap their mind around. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They get frustrated. And they'll feel like they don't measure up, and I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't any fun. But if it's their shot that you're making it all about, it works great, and they have so much fun. And if they hit it short, they don't care. They say, "Oh, okay, see if you can hit it over there," and they don't care how many times they hit it. They just get up, they whack it, and then it's your job. So they don't have to reach you. It's your job to hit it near them. So it just flips the whole thing, and they have so much more fun. Now, the other thing for beginners is, how do you keep score? Well, it's pretty depressing when you're playing with a couple of other people and they go, one says 4, the other says 5, and you go 12. That doesn't feel very good. So for beginners, don't keep your total score. Here's what you do. you get a point for every shot you liked.
Mm-hmm.
If you liked it, and if you felt like, oh man, I hit one in the air, that's great, I like that, and you get a point for that. And your job is to get as many points as you can.
Yep.
And so all you're doing is counting ones you like and forgetting about the bad ones. Otherwise, you're writing down a score, and you have to add up all the bad shots, and that's no fun. So just count the ones you like. And somebody says, well, then you'll just start getting points on every shot. No, because as you get better, your standards will go up, and you won't like the one that's pretty good, and you start going, and it moves you along. Now, when you are ready to keep score, measure yourself against the scorecard. The scorecard is what a golfer would shoot. You set up, and this is the second, I introduce it right away. It's an early chapter in Zen Golf, and it's called Your Personal Par. If you are a 36 handicapper, you get 2 shots on every hole. And I want you to go in and use a pen or pencil and change the scorecard. Write a different number. So every par 3 is a par 5. You have par 5s, par 6s, and par 7s. That's what you're playing. And it works so well. I was out doing a little corporate clinic, and we went out and played a few holes. And this one guy, he's kind of scuffled his drive. He had a pretty, mediocre hybrid up. He hit another one up, and he was 4 shots, and he hadn't reached the green. And somebody said, a little frustrated, he said, "Oh no! I get 3 more shots to shoot par. If I can just chip it up on the green and make 2 putts, I get my par 7. It was a par 5. I get my par 7." And what a refreshing thing than to say, I'm already over par and I haven't even gotten to the green yet. You see? So set up your personal par, and how many, let's talk about 12 handicappers, okay? Add 12 to 72, that's 84. If you shoot an 82, somebody can say, well, what'd you shoot? And you say 2 under. How many times do they get to say 2 under? Never. But this way they get to say, I shot 2 under. I shot 2 under my par. Because that's my par. And so those are some things that I wanted to share for based on what you were talking about before. I did like what they said about how you teach beginners, and that's what I do. And Harvey Penick said this. If I'm going to teach a kid how to play golf, I put a putter in his hand, and I put the ball 1 foot from the hole. Because that's how each hole ends, with the ball going in the hole. And we work backward from there. And once they can sink the 1-footers, they sink 2-footers, and then 3-footers, and then 4-footers, and work backwards to longer putts, then chips, then pitches, and away you go. I loved what they said about get good at your 3rd shot. Get good at your 3rd shot or your 2nd one for a par 3, or your 4th one for a par 5. But get good at the last shot you got to hit to get onto the green. And I love that. So I just wanted to tell you.
Yeah, and definitely, Joe, some great points that you bring as well. And you're exactly right. One of the things that, again, frustrates so many golfers, specifically beginning golfers, is it's already a challenging and difficult game for even the best out there. And when you've got somebody that's not familiar with how the game is, and now you throw in factors like your typical par 72, and you've got a 7,400-yard golf course, and it's just a very daunting task. Or you get a situation where, again, like you mentioned, working with juniors or younger players that don't have the capacity at this point to be able to hit it out there any great distance, and then you match them up with a parent who's trying to kind of show off a little bit in front of their child. you're not going to score any brownie
No
points,
fun.
if you will,
It
that way.
won't be
And
fun.
no, exactly. It's not fun for the child, and they're not going to want to do it because they don't feel they can compete, as you suggest. And I like the point system that you put in place. I think that's a great way, really. And it all boils down to what I pointed out earlier too, is confidence. You want the person to build confidence, and the best way to do that is to start out simply. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but I host another program on Tuesday mornings called The Women of Golf, and my good friend, LPGA professional Cindy Miller. I don't know if you're familiar with her or not, but she talks about a new sort of program called Par 36. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this or not, but basically the gist of it is you start out at 25 yards from the green. And the idea and the concept is that you play from that distance until you par 36. So in other words, you've got two shots from 25 yards to par. Now you could adjust that as you suggest. You could make it, an additional. You can make it three shots if you want. But the idea is you do not move from that position until you can par it. And then when you do, then you move back maybe to 40 or 50 yards, and you do the same process again. And the idea is, as you suggest, you're honing on those shorter shots, and it's not as daunting when you're trying to shoot a number like that from a very close distance, as opposed to going from tee to green, which often is the case for most players. So that's just another way that, I think that professionals are starting to recognize that we need to find a way to simplify the process for most people, because it is very, very overwhelming for a lot of beginning golfers. And the stats, you look at the stats each year, and there's literally millions of new people coming into the game, but on the back door, there's just as many exiting the game for some of the reasons we talked about tonight. It's just very difficult, and obviously there's cost issues as well. But so we have to find ways of again, encouraging them to want to get out there and play, but not making it so difficult that it's overwhelming that they can't play, and let them graduate and excel at their pace and under their terms and conditions, not basically what the industry standard is. And I like what you suggested about adding, additional strokes on it and play to your par, not necessarily the par of the course. And I think that's a great suggestion.
That's exactly right.
I want to ask.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry, Joe. No, please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that it comes from par is kind of an artificial concept. If we didn't even have it, it wouldn't change anything about moving the ball from tee to green and into the hole. And in fact, it was a fluid number. It was a variable number. In the old days, it was set up as a standard to qualify for a city championship in Scotland, and it changed based on the weather. If it's blowing 40 miles an hour and raining sideways, par is not 72, probably more like 82.
Right.
And so
right.
par was adjusted for everybody on the course. And so why not adjust it for yourself based on your capabilities?
Right. And again, people are more apt to want to stick around and continue to try something. I mean, every sport can be difficult when you're first learning. But golf is especially, the ball is a lot smaller. The club face is much smaller than, as Clint put in earlier, it's a stick and ball game. It's definitely more challenging, but it can be more rewarding when you begin to develop a sufficient skill. And again, even the best players, they're never going to master it. But it's a game that you can always improve on, and you can get a tremendous amount of enjoyment out of it if you approach it the right way. So I think it's just a matter of rethinking the process. I want to ask you, Joe, this first question to sort of officially start the evening off, and I appreciate very much you adding some points into our earlier discussion with the panel. But I want to ask you, what makes it, and I'm referring to golf, so mentally tough, or is it?
When you say mentally tough, that's an interesting question. I think that one of the things that makes it so let's call it mentally challenging, and that is that it appears like it should be easier than it is. Nobody's throwing a ball at you at 100 miles an hour. It's just sitting there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
There's no shot block. I mean, you don't want to take too long. Everybody will start going, what you could have hit that shot. You could have hit that bad in a lot less time. But there's no, you get to take your time. You get to stand anywhere you can put it anywhere on the tee that you want. It's sitting up in the air off the tee. There's a big, wide open space in front of you. How could it be this hard? and you're on the green, and here's a little ball, here's a little flat stick. You're just trying to roll the ball over into the hole. Why? And so because it seems like it would be so easy, it's so frustrating. Now, the other thing that's challenging is it's addictive. Now, golf is addictive like slot machines. You know how slot machines are programmed? You know that it's not random. They intentionally program slot machines to reward on a schedule. And it's based on psychological studies that the most reinforcing the strongest pattern of reinforcement, of reward, let's not use fancy words, the pattern of reward that gets you to make the strongest habit and want to keep doing something is called, it's random and it's intermittent. You don't know when you're going to get your reward, and it doesn't come every time. So you put your quarter in the slot, you put another one in the slot machine. After 5 quarters, you get a jackpot. Ooh, a little one. Oh, and then you go, and it goes for 10 or 15, maybe 17, and then you get another one. Then maybe after 2, then maybe after 30, and it starts getting longer and longer and longer in between, and it keeps you going. Well, in golf, every now and again, as they say, even a blind squirrel finds an acorn once in a while. No matter what your level, every now and again you're going to hit a good one, and you go, "Oh, I like that. That wasn't so hard." And here's the trick: the ones that are the best shots feel the easiest. Isn't that true?
Right. Exactly.
When we talk about a great shot, we feel like, well, I didn't even try very hard. It was like the club was swinging itself. And the secret to that is what I teach. You got out of your own way.
Yeah.
And whatever talent you had came out. And you hit a decent shot. And a happy shot for your level of play. And you got your reward. So you're going to make a lot more swings to try to get that reward again. And that's what's so frustrating. And again, I don't know if your audience is old enough, but we used to have these little toys that were made out of bamboo, and they were a little woven tube made out of bamboo, and you would stick your fingers in each end.
Oh yeah, I know.
And the harder you pull to get out, the narrower the tube got, and the more stuck you were. And that's what golf feels like for most people. The harder they try, the more stuck they feel and the worse they do. And
exactly.
And if you take your technical instruction and you think, I actually call this moron golf. You make a swing and you got something and you didn't hit a good shot and you add something more on. I got to take it back a little lower. Okay, and then you do that, and then you hit another good shot. Okay, I got to take it back lower and slower. Okay, then another. I got to cock my wrists more on the way back, and then I got to pause more at the top, and then I got to do this more, and I got to do more of that, and more of this, and more of that, and by the 16th hole, you're not sure which end of the thing to hold. You're so confused.
Right.
And you say, I give up. I'm just going to get up and whack it. Oh, and there's a good shot. And you say, when are we playing tomorrow? So
right, exactly, and that's what brings you back. You're exactly right. That's what brings you back. Just on a quick side note, I remember. I'm sad to say I'm old enough to remember the puzzle you're talking about, and I used to have one of those. So I hate to say it, but I'm in that generation that had those toys. They were actually a lot of fun and very, very interesting. Let me ask you something. Just going on to what you were talking about here. With trying to add more on and so on and so forth. I can remember when I was a youngster, and as I mentioned earlier, my father was the one that taught me to play when I was a kid, and we went to the country club, but they had a par 3 course, so that's where he taught me. And one of the things he used to say to me, going to a point you just made, is I'd say, well, take a practice swing or two, and then we'll get up and address the ball and so on and so forth. And he would say to me during my practice swings, he said, "That's what you want to do." And for the longest time, I didn't understand what he was talking about. I said, "Do what?" And he said, "Do that." And he said, "Swing the club just like you did in your practice swing, but this time do it addressing the ball." And for the longest time, I couldn't do it because, when you're swinging, it's very fluid. You're not really thinking about it. You're just swinging. The club gets in, the ball gets in the way of the club, and you have this beautiful shot. But as soon as, for some reason, when that club face gets in behind the ball, you're not swinging fluidly anymore, and all kinds of thoughts go through your head, and so on and so forth. So obviously there's a difference when you're working with a player like a Vijay Singh or a Christy Kerr, as you've worked, and many other professionals. When you're working with amateurs, which I know you've done many as well, what do you say to them to get them to understand? Because obviously there's a difference between the level of play, but obviously the better players know where they need to focus their efforts on. How do you help the amateur players be more like the professional players? What do you say to them? What's the conversation you have with them?
I think that you'd be surprised at how similar issues some of the pros have. But let me start with what you were talking about of why you see an amateur make a beautiful practice swing, and then they get up to the enemy, the ball, and their swing looks like they're chopping wood, right? They make a beautiful inside, nice swing plane, and then they lift the club straight up and smash down on the ball or come over the top.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
There's a chapter in Zen Golf. What is your target? Okay. What is your intention in making a practice swing? I'm going to ask you. What are you trying to accomplish in making a practice swing? Make a good swing.
Well,
right?
Exactly.
Make a good swing. That's all you're trying to do is make a good swing. What's your intention when you get up to the ball? Hit it far and hit it where you want it to go. What happened to the swing? Gone. All you're thinking about is how you want it to turn out. And so your target stops being your intention stops being make a good swing and starts being hit the ball. So now instead of swinging through the ball, you're hitting at the ball, which usually makes you stop there. Okay, the second thing is, again, so that was what's your intention. What's your target? Well, your target is where you want it to end up. But what people change is the target of their swing is the ball. What are you trying to do? Hit the ball. No. So I changed the language. What you're trying to do is send the ball. Send it to the target is different than hit at the ball. And I had the wonderful experience. I was teaching a clinic, and two young beginning ladies, young ladies, left me a note on the desk. We were going to meet in the in the conference room at the club, and they said, "Doc, we're out at the sending range, sending balls to targets." Great. It's the sending range, not the driving range, not the hitting range. It's where you're sending it. So if it changes everything in your physical dynamic. Instead of hit at the ball, send the ball to the target. So that's one of the differences that we're talking about. And I have a special thing that I do with the short game that I think will connect with you on what you were saying. For your practice swing, it's in the short game, it's not about the ball, it's about the lie and the grass. So in your practice swing, how do I want the club to go through the grass? And you make that practice swing. And when you get to the ball, pretend the ball isn't there. Your intention is, I want to make one more swing like I just did through the grass. not at the ball.
Right.
You will be amazed at how soft the ball comes off, how rarely you blade it, because you're not you treat the ball as invisible. Look past it, right at the grass, and make that what you want the club to go through, and you will have a much, much better experience. Now, I want to do one more thing, and that is how the amateurs and pros are the same, okay? And that is, Christie came up with this acronym, the biggest source of interference. If you watch the pros on the range, they just stripe almost every shot. Why don't they do that on the course? Because on the course, the source of interference is worry about results. And Christie came up with this acronym, WAR, worry about results. When you worry about results, you are at war with yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's a great acronym.
Isn't it great? So that's the source of interference. Yep. If you are worried about how it's going to turn out, that interferes with your freedom and commitment of swinging the club. And when you make a practice swing, you're not worried about how it's going to turn out. You have freedom and commitment in that practice swing. And your dad says, just like that. So if you could get up and say, I want my swing to feel just like that, and I don't care where the ball goes, wow, you're going to make a great, great swing. Now, you care where the ball goes, and I have a chapter in Zen Golf to care or not to care. You care where the ball goes, and you should prepare yourself. And that's why I have a system called PAR, P-A-R, preparation, action, response to results. Do your best in preparation. And prepare yourself. Alignment. Get yourself aligned. Get yourself set up. Get your posture together. Get your grip the way you want it. And then action has to be as free as it can be from worry about results. Fully committed, no worry about the outcome. And then reflection at the end, PAR, P-A-R, reflect on the shot and see, how well did you accomplish what you were trying to in your preparation and action, and what can you learn from it? Okay? So that's how the amateurs and pros are the same. Worry about results and thinking about what could go wrong is the biggest source of interference. When I started with VJ, his first question to me was, he said, hey, Doc, I've been out here a long time. I played a lot of these courses. I know where all the bad places are. How do I stop thinking about where the bad places it could go and focus on where I do want it to go? And that was the start of our work. So how different is that than the club golfer who gets up and says, uh-oh, out of bounds on the left, lake on the right, blah, blah, blah. I got a great story for you. I worked with David Thomas for a while as well. And I saw him, he's now on the senior tour. I saw him at a club near me. I teach at the Ojai Valley Inn in Southern California, and Sherwood Country Club, where they had the one of the Schwab Cup playoffs for the Champions Tour. It's only 45. Right. We used to have the Tiger Tour too. It's only 45 minutes down the road from me, so I'm always there. And I saw David, and I worked with him during the Pro-Am at the tournament. And we stood up on this one hole that had a big lake on the right. And this guy hooked his tee shot into the houses on the left. And I said, David shook his head, and I said, good job of missing the lake. And he cracked up. He just cracked up. I said, what a good shot. He missed that lake by a couple of 100 yards. Yeah, he hit into the houses out of bounds on the left, but he didn't hit it. He didn't push that ball to the right. And I saw David. It was 10 years since we were at the Tiger event, and he was playing in it. And he came up to me and says, "Hey Doc, great to see you. I was just talking to you about you, telling him about what you said on that hole, the guy hitting it out of bounds and into the houses and saying, nice job of missing the lake." That's how much of an impression it made on him. So what we end up doing, instead of hitting where we do want it to go, and here's the secret, okay? The way that this interference of worry about results affects your swing is you're either helping or protecting, or a combination of the two. Okay? What did he do? He helped it away from the lake by rolling his hands over and hitting a big old hook. Good job of getting it to go away from the lake. Okay? He also and the other thing we do is prevent it from going where we want it to. So if there's trouble on the left, what do? We hold it off. We hold that face wide open. We do not let that club release. And that way we prevent it from going where we don't want it to go. Helping it by giving it something extra, preventing by holding back, either one, you're going to hit a bad shot. And that all comes from you trying to either make it go where you do want it to go, or some combination of, or avoiding where you don't want to go. And that goes for the pros as well as the amateurs. The last thing that goes at all levels of golf, perfectionism. And I have a secret that is a pretty, you would think it's obvious, but it isn't. In golf, aim at a spot, but we play to an area. Everyone has a dispersion pattern. The pros have a smaller one. Amateurs have a big one. Beginners have a huge one. Who knows where it's going to go? But we all aim at a spot. And if you think you're supposed to hit it at your spot every time, you're wrong. This one instruction transformed Christie's game and moved her from she had won a major championship, and she was always knocking on the door. But this took her to number one in the world. And that is she stopped being so perfectionist and trying to guide her shots to a spot and started ripping them at her target with full commitment because she accepted the area that they could come down in. If it wasn't a game that you played to an area, every great player would hole out from the fairway on every shot. But they don't.
Exactly.
So you aim at your spot and pick a real specific target spot, but then see an area around it and say, all I got to do is hit it in that area. And you relax. It gives you room to play, frees you up to make a free and committed swing. And who doesn't want to make a free and committed swing? Nothing feels better and nothing feels worse than those holding back, guidey kind of steering swings, right?
Right. Well, and a lot of it too, Joe, is this. We hear in the golf industry, hit it to your target, and I think people misunderstand that comment and that analogy, if you will, and they the way you've just explained is exactly right. You're certainly picking a spot, but it's an area that you're really hitting the ball to, and because you're never going to hit it to that exact spot. I mean, the odds are astronomical. But I think sometimes when people hear that term, pick your target, they think they've got to hit it specifically there, and again, they're trying to maneuver and force the ball to do that. And even the pros, as you suggest, even do that as well. And I think that adds for a lot of frustration. I want to get something in real quick here before we move on. I remissed if I didn't. Back a number of weeks ago, I had another special guest on the show by the name of John Taylor, who I know you're familiar with from England. And he accredited on the show. I know you're familiar with him, and I know you've had many, many conversations, and he had some very kind things to say in general about you, and I know you've helped him in his journey, and now he's using the skills that he has learned on his own and obviously through his conversations with you and sort of paying it forward. When you get a situation like that where you're helping somebody, whether it be somebody like John or anybody in the golfing industry, what is it you most and I don't want to use the word proud, but what are you most trying to accomplish when you're working with somebody? What is your number one goal when you're working with somebody?
That's a great question, and thank you for mentioning that. And a shout out to John. He's great, and it's something that I have. I've been doing this a long time, and I do want to pay it forward. And and so mentorship of pros. I have a great student, Dr. Peter Murphy, who is he is a psychologist, and he has been training with me both in the mindfulness aspect of what I bring to instruction, and in the golf instruction aspect of putting all of that together. And I have others that I'm working with, and it's so much fun to mentor other coaches to do that. Now, what's the most important thing for me? Confidence. Giving them, or it's not giving them. Everyone has that confidence. It's freeing up, and it's no different than what I just told you. Instead of worrying about what could go wrong, having the confidence to get out of your own way and present your wisdom and your experience and share that with students, and to be able to lead them along. And again, I want to share something that my teacher, a Tibetan Buddhist teacher, meditation master back in the 1970s, when I first started teaching, he said, first things first, be willing to say, I don't know. Too many people, my job is to give you answers, so I'm gonna guess or make it up if I don't know. And that's not good. Just say, I don't know. Let me get back to you. I'm going to find out. And the second is, it's okay to leave people curious, and that they don't quite get the whole thing, and they need to try to figure it out a little bit for themselves, and then and chew on it for a little bit, and then come back to you. What's not okay is to leave them with a misunderstanding. So saying less is better. Helping your students, and this is helping the coaches that I'm coaching and their students. I try to teach them, don't try to tell your students everything. Try to help them figure things out for themselves. Give them hints. Ask them questions. Because if a student discovers it for themselves, it will just sink in. It'll be part of their, and I'm going to use the word fabric. It'll be part of their own fabric. If you tell them, it's a patch you're putting onto their fabric, and it'll come off. If they discover it for themselves, it becomes part of the fabric. It's sewn in. And so for mentoring people, I want to hear what they're saying and have them express themselves first, and then I'll ask questions like, is there another way that you could put that? Is that about you, or is that about them? And one of the things that I try to let people know is, when you're coaching people, and this came up with what Clint and Pete were talking about earlier, when you're coaching people in the technical part of the game, it's much more effective to teach them to use, I'm going to use the word what, to teach them what kinds of swing keys or what kinds of thoughts or feels, rather than how. Think about what you want the club head to do. Think about what you want your body to do, rather than how you are going to get it to do that. And the story, I just had a lesson, and I told this story. A snail and a centipede were talking, and the snail challenged the centipede to a race. The centipede said, come on, a race? What, are you kidding? I can't. He said, yeah, we'll race over to that rock. He said, I could get to that rock and back 10 times before you could reach it. And the snail said, what are you, chicken? And the centipede said, no, I'll race you. And the snail said, okay, let's get ready. On the count of 3, we'll go. Oh, but I have one question for you before we start. What order do you move all your legs in? Snail said 1, 2, 3, and he won the race. Because the centipede got so confused thinking about what order he was going to move his legs in. Well, a centipede, it's named after the word cent, 100, 100 legs. We have 100, at least 100 muscles we're moving in our body in a golf swing. Do you want to think about each one of those and the order that you're going to move them in, you'll never swing the club. The snail just said, I got to get from here to there. What you're trying to do, what do you want to do with the club head? What do you want the club head to do? What do you want your body to feel like? Those two things. What do you want it to do? What do you want your body to feel like? Rather than how should I move my body and how should I move the golf club? No, forget the how. Just teach them what. That's it's that simple. And when you're playing, give yourself what swing keys or swing feels, not how swing thought instructions.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And it's like I said earlier in that segment, one of the problems that I think, especially with beginners, that a lot of coaches have is they get, too technical in their jargon, and it's just overwhelming. Too much information, especially for the beginning golfers. Yeah, less is more. Yeah, go ahead.
I got a great story for that. Okay, so I was doing a little group school, and I'll go through, and one of my techniques is to ask a golfer that it's starting with me, tell me something about your game. It's kind of my Rorschach inkblot thing, because it's very open-ended. And if they start talking about what they worry about, what their problems are, I go, okay, excuse me, we're going a little negative here. But I asked this one lady, I went around the room and I said, so young lady, tell me something about your game. She takes out a piece of paper and says, here are the 12 things that my golf instructor wants me to do on every shot. Now, I'd seen her warm up a little bit before we had our meeting, and she looked like a robot. She would go through each piece of the in a separate sequence, right? Now, 4 of those pieces were in her setup, and I think one was in how she should finish or something like that. But there were 8 pieces to the swing, and I recognized some of them, and I said, could you do me a favor? Have you ever skipped a rock? He said, on a pond. She said, oh, yeah, I've done that. I said, show me, and we were in a classroom. No rocks, no pond. I said, just show me what it would look like. And she skips a rock, and she does a pretty good job. And I said, okay, now let's do it in slow motion. Start. And I said, okay, how did you start? You started by turning your upper body away from your target, right? She said, oh, yeah. I said, check 1. I said, then you paused at the top, right? She said, oh, check 2. You started down with your lower body. Check 3. Your right elbow came close to your hip. Check 4. We went through and we checked all 8 points off. And all it was feel like you're skipping a rock. That was her only instruction. We got out to the range, and she said, I don't have to think about any of those things. I said, nope. Feel like you're swinging the club like you're skipping a rock. And she starts hitting shots, and they go in the air and straight. And
I know, it's amazing.
We went out to play, and her husband got a little upset because she was playing better than he was. With only one swing feel, that one swing feel, swing the club like you're skipping a rock. There is a what instruction, not a how instruction. What it should feel like.
I agree wholeheartedly. One of the things too that that I really am a proponent against, and don't get me wrong when I say, let me preface this real quick. I'm all for technology. I think the technology is wonderful, some of the advancements that have been made in golf instruction. But are you teaching the golfer, or are you teaching the technology? One of the criticisms I have with the golf industry, and I'm part of it, is that they spend most of their time teaching the technology to their students and not actually how to play the game. And what I mean by that is they will be sitting in front of a monitor and they're watching the monitor while the student's hitting in a bay or whether they're hitting outside because they've got the launch monitors. And all this stuff I know does work and can help, and there's some useful, vital information. But the instructor is spending the majority of time explaining the technology to the student as opposed to how to play the game. And that's something that I fear is adding to the frustration for many amateur golfers, is that they're so confused with all the data coming in, with this technology and so forth. And again, it has its place, but used in the proper context. Do you see that as well?
Well, I think I agree with you. Everything in its place. It can inform, and when you see the TrackMan flights and things, that's okay. But I think the purpose of it should really be for the instructor to have the information and not give so much of that information to the student. If you're talking too much about spin rates and this, that, and the other thing, especially for high cap students, what the value is for the instructor to get the information that was the kind of trajectory, flight, smash factor, impact angle, all of those things that the instructor is looking for. And then this is a technique that I would teach an instructor, okay? Then ask the student, what did that feel like to you? Tell me what that felt like. There's an old saying in golf, what you feel isn't necessarily what is real. So the student may feel like, I took it back way, way low, but they didn't. They took it back on a nice plane. But you say, okay, however that felt, that's what you want to feel. You see? I had a student who was really quick at the top. And I said, hold it up there for what feels like a second. He said, oh, that feels really long. It wasn't. I said, now 2 seconds. Now you got to 3 seconds. He said, you got to be kidding. He held what it felt like to him was 3 seconds at the top, and I videoed it. So this is where value comes in on technology. I had a video of him. He hit the shot, and I said, let's look at the video. I said, what do you think of the transition? He said, it was perfect. I said, yes, it was. But if I had told you that, would you have believed me? He said, no, because it felt like I was up there forever. And so it became his swing feel. I need to feel like I'm up there for 3 whole seconds. And it transformed his. Now, as he got used to that, he only had to feel like he was up there for 2 seconds and then 1 second, and then it became second nature to him. But the point is, as an instructor, I told him that's what you need to feel like, even though that's not what's actually happening. I have another student. She goes John Daly past parallel. I said, well, you need to feel like you're only going to midnight, to straight up, because what feels like parallel is almost straight down to you. So that's what the instructor can do. Get the information from the technology, and when they find that they've got what they want in the student's performance, tell the student, ask the student, what were you feeling? What were the feels that you had when you made that swing? And let's write those down, because those are going to be your feel keys. So that's what I would suggest. Yeah,
I think some great advice, and you've hit it right on the nail right on the head, exactly with what you were talking about. You know, there's a place and time for everything, and I concur with you. I think technology does have a place. I think that sometimes, like anything, not just in golf, but in other areas too, I think sometimes we get caught up in things. And the key thing really is, as you pointed out earlier, you really need to listen to the students, and you really need to hear what they're saying and what their areas of difficulty are, and then put together a plan of what needs to be done and not how it needs to be done. Because again, that gets too confusing for so many. I can't believe this is actually the fastest hour that I think I've done in a long time, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed it. And we're running out of time, but I want to give you an opportunity. I'm going to have to come back because I know there are so many other things that we want to talk about, but I want to very quickly in the last few moments to give you an opportunity. Of course, we really touched along, even though without really mentioning it too much, about your book, Zen Golf, Mastering the Mental Game. But you've written some other books, including a Disney book as well that was being given out. It was given from the Nicholas Children's Hospital, Walk in the Wood.
Yeah.
To them. Meditations and Mindfulness with a bear named Pooh, of course referring to Winnie the Pooh. And actually you have several books, 4 golf books, a tennis book, a diet book, and of course the family book for Disney featuring Winnie the Pooh. Where can the folks go and get that? More information first off on that, and where can they pick them up? Okay,
well, the latest book is, I'm so delighted. I wrote it with my sister, and my wife designed the layout and the cover and everything. And it's a Disney book for families. It's a walk in the wood, meditations on mindfulness with a bear named Pooh, and it's a day in the life of Winnie the Pooh, 16 chapters, and each story tells something about mindfulness, kindness, and lots of family values: self-esteem, self-confidence, gratitude, friendship, all of those things. At the end, and the stories are very much like the original A.A. Milne Winnie the Pooh stories, which were written for adults and children.
Right.
After each chapter is an adult instruction on different meditations they can do on these topics like mindfulness, kindness, gratitude, self-confidence, things like that the adults can learn and practice and then share with their children at age-appropriate levels. So I was delighted that Disney agreed to donate over 300 copies to the Nicholas Children's Hospital Foundation. Jack and Barbara are so dear to me, and I've known them for 20 years. I was supposed to fly out there and do a reading and signing, and we got shut down by the virus, which was very, very sad.
Right.
But the kids book. So what I did was I recorded videos of me reading selected chapters from the book that they're going to play on the closed circuit TV in the hospital for all the kids.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to give the 300 books to the families of kids in the hospital at the hospital when they're there and as they're leaving. It's very exciting. And you can find all the books at my website, drjoeparent.com, drjoeparent.com. And I have a YouTube channel that they're all posted on. Again, the Dr. Joe Parent YouTube channel. And you can sign up. I send out a weekly email quote of the week. It's just one page with a golf quote from one of my golf books and a life quote from the Winnie the Pooh book or my diet book. And the diet book is really helpful. There's no recipes or menus. I call it the best diet book ever, The Zen of Losing Weight. And it's really great for what you would call the quarantine 15. A lot of people have put on a lot of weight in this shutdown.
Oh, yeah.
So this will help you just change your eating and exercise habits a little bit, enough to shed those pounds and get you back to fighting weight when we emerge out of this thing. So I also have a website, zengolf.com, and a ZenGolf app. All of these feed into the drjoeparent.com website, and that's where my business speaking, keynote speeches, on performance psychology for business, the weight loss program, and teaching mindfulness, and I also offer every couple of weeks a free mindfulness session that people can on Zoom that people can tune into. So you'll find that all on the website, and I also have an author page on Amazon.com that you can go to and see more about the book. So thank you for asking that, Ted.
Perfect. Not a problem. Well, Joe, thank you. I hate that we're out of time, and I'm definitely going to have to reschedule to come back on a future date so we can continue the conversation. There's so much more I know we can talk about, but I appreciate you not only coming on and sharing some great insight, I know, from your book and sharing some of the other books that you've written as well. We'll get into a little bit more of that next time as well, but I also appreciate you adding some additional thoughts to my earlier discussion with the Coach's Corner panel. So I appreciate that to start the show off. But thank you very much, and it was a pleasure having you on the show, and I look forward to having you back here again real soon.
The pleasure was mine. Let's do it again.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much, and have a great evening. All right. That was my very special guest, best-selling author of Zen Golf, Mastering the Mental Game, Dr. Joe Parent. All the other books that he mentioned here just a few moments ago, if you go to drjoeparent.com, you can get all the links there and all the information on where you can get your hot little hands on them. So by all means, be sure to reach out. Go to drjoeparent.com. And also some other great information. You may want to have him when things clear up a little bit and he's able to get around a little bit better during these difficult times with COVID. You may also want to reach out to him and have him do some guest speaking and so forth as well. So you can get all that information on his website. All right. On that note, I look forward to wrapping up another show. I thoroughly enjoyed tonight's guests, both on the Coach's Corner panel. Again, a special thanks to Pete Buchanan and Clint Wright, and once again to Dr. Joe Parent, best-selling author of Zen Golf, Mastering the Mental Game. Tune in next week. I will have another great panel discussion, and my good friend and partner, Peter Kessler, the voice of golf, will be joining me next Thursday right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening to this evening's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. Remember to tune in each week at blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live. If you can't join us live, check out the on-demand section for previously aired broadcasts, or listen on any of the following social media platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, TalkStream Live, and of course Spotify. To get updates on future shows and upcoming guests, be sure to visit the show's Facebook page, Golf Talk Live blog. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. Remember to join me live each week for another great broadcast of Golf Talk Live. See you next time. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.